I mean, to push somebody in a wheelchair is not a position that's for everybody. It's not like flipping a burger or things like that. All those are all jobs everybody needs, but you have to have some some compassion to be able to, with working with people with special needs that need it, that maybe not be able to walk, or they have a speech impediment, or they have something there. This is a chance for them to learn how to work with people that that need help with services.
Founder of BAC Transportation and Alaska Medical Transport. How are you, buddy?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Things are good?
Yeah.
The weather's nice finally for a little bit here.
12th day of summer.
We'll see when this thing drops what the weather's going to be like.
Yeah. We leave in a couple of weeks, so it's okay.
Yeah. Where are you guys going?
Going back to Nashville.
You guys camper?
No.
Using the motorhome?
We're going there for a conference.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You just picked up a couple of ambulances, didn't you, from down
We did.
there?
No, wait, Wyoming. Yeah,
That was Wyoming.
Yeah. State that nobody lives.
Yeah.
One of the biggest states in the United States, and
nobody lives there.
500,000 people.
It's kind of like Alaska in a little bit, right?
Just not so far removed.
Yeah.
It's in the middle of a bunch of states.
Okay, I got some questions to start with.
Yeah.
Since maybe our listeners, we just gotta assume they maybe don't know who you are. I'm sure a lot of people are going to listen to this that do know you, are interested in what you have to say. But just kind of starting from the beginning, the inception of your transportation company, and like how did it all start? Did you guys your limo company starting out? So kind of give us a background and how this whole thing came about.
It's kind of a funny story. We all used to go out, and all of us were young business professionals, and landscaping, lawn maintenance, snow plowing company, painting company. My business partner at the time when we started was Brent Sanders, and his parents own Nova Property Management. And they're part of the Browns family. And so we all used to go out quite a bit, and none of us could afford to get in trouble or get DWIs and things like that. So when we get a group of 8 or 10 of us, we'd always try to call a limo, and the time that you paid for the limo and everything like that, it was cheaper than taking cabs around town, and our group would kind of stay together, and it cost us 30, 40, $50 a night to go out. Cars stayed at home. Everybody got picked up. Everybody got dropped off.
And this was before Uber, just to clarify. Like, what were we talking like in the
2000?
In 2000.
Well, the 2000 we started
90s.
the company. So in 98, 99.
Yeah. Prior to pre-cell phones,
there's
pre-Apple, pre-iPhone, I should say.
I think didn't we have Apples then?
No, 2006.
Okay, yeah. So we used to go out quite a bit, and friends of us, we're all in 20s and stuff like that. So we made friends with one of the little companies and became a regular. And if they didn't have limos going out, we'd call them up and ask them, and cut us a good deal, and we'd take them out. We'd always take care of the driver, and so we get them, and sometimes they were a little bit dirty, and they weren't so clean. They didn't smell so good. But I mean, we were going out. I mean, that was it. So I told Brent, I said, one day we could do this better. We could really. We knew everybody in the market. We knew everybody in our age brackets back when Hellfighters used to be there. They used to be back in the day, Rum Runners, when Rum Runners 1, Rum Runners 2. And so, we just thought about it, and we thought, hey, we could do this. Let's get a business plan together. So I worked on it for about 6 months and came out with a business plan. They were getting ready to have the NLA show, National Limousine Association show in Las Vegas. And I said, I found one of the carriers up there was selling like 40 limos. I said, Brent, this is our chance. So we went up there and got there a couple of days early, and going up there, and we got there and met JJ Bell Transportation in Las Vegas, one of the largest transportation companies in the United States. And we get there, and there's like 14 left out of 40. I'm like, oh no. And so he's like, we got 4 people in the lot looking at them, Charlie, they're going super fast. So I go up and I find 2, and I came back, he's like, they're gone. There's like 6 left to go. And I'm like, holy 20. So he has these 2-way radios sitting on this thing. I grabbed a radio, and Brett was sitting there with another radio, and basically we ran up, and he told me what vehicles are there. And there's 2 Cadillacs and 4 Fords, Lincolns. And I didn't want nothing to do with the Cadillacs. Cadillacs just had not a very good look to them at that day. So I found one, this one was good, and this one was good, and this one was not good. And so I got kicked out of this one. So I just took pretty much the last 3 they had and picked the 2 best of them. I said, well, let's take these 2. And he said, all right. So I said, Brett, let me do the talking. We're going to make a deal on these things. We were so limited cash back then, we were all out of pocket.
I'm curious where this capital came from and like how much these things cost back in the day. Yeah.
So Brent was always a smart guy. He always had real estate. He worked for his parents and running Nova Property Management. I had a landscaping lawn maintenance company, so I was independent. So we got into it fairly inexpensive in the day, but a lot of money to us back then.
Yeah.
So we went down, and I talked to JJ. I'm like, really looking for a party bus. And the party buses are just coming in, and back in the day, there used to be the Magic Bus here in town. They used to let out their regular bus, and it was just had seats in it. So that was the party buses back in the day. He said, I got this 20 passenger bus that's sitting around. It's got a lot of miles on it, but we can get you a good deal on this. All right. So we go up there and he's like, well, it's 15,000 for this, 20,000 for each one of these. I'm like, so what kind of deal? We're going to be one of your big customers. He's like, I just sold 40 of these in 3 days, Charlie. Nobody got a deal. I'm like, yeah, but we're just starting out. We really need help. We need to say. So he was sitting there. He's like, there's guys outside waiting for these things. I'm like, just cut us 5,000 off this thing. We got to get these things all the way back. Finally he goes, I'll give you 5,000. Never call me again. I was like, no, JJ, we really want to work with you. And he knew my aunt, and he was really gracious and good. And he let us have him for the $5,000 off. And we got our first 2 limos in a bus. That was in 99, right in December. Oh, it was right January 2000. That's what it was. January 2000. So we had our first 2 limos in a bus. So we went and celebrated that night. And the next day we were supposed to be there to pick up the limos. We had no idea how to operate them. We had nothing.
And you didn't have to have a special license or anything.
No, there were 6 passenger limos, so we didn't know anything then. So 6 passengers were just so small that we realized right away we needed a 10 passenger. Because 10 was the bigger one back in the day. So we went and celebrated that night. Obviously, did not make the 8 a.m. wake up call to go meet him. JJ was playing golf, pretty pissed off at us that he was taking his golf time to come over and show us, and we did a no show on him. So,
oh my gosh.
You
were in Vegas though.
We were in Vegas.
Yeah.
Had no business driving that day.
Yeah.
Taking a cab over there to look at the vehicles, and his mechanic that spoke very little English was trying to explain all the buttons to us. And
what did they do back? What did the limos do back then? Because I know now they're super like Bluetooth and like all the lights in the ceiling, lasers and stuff. But what did they do back then?
They're a little bit more common. They had not LED lights. They had a halogen bulb that would light up the lights that would go down the sides.
Oh, I see.
They would have the stereo system, the partition, and they would have a couple of their
bar lights,
things like that. But it was all foreign to us. We had no idea how to work any of that. Yeah. The partition, the lights, when the bulb goes out, what do we do? And so he kind of walked us through the whole entire thing. So it was really good. So we owned them, but we had to leave them there because obviously we shouldn't be driving for a couple more hours. So we left them there in the buses, and then we had our friends flying and helped us drive them back. So That was our first start up at BAC. So we run our first 2 limos in a bus, and we drove them all the way from Vegas all the way to Anchorage.
Oh my gosh. How was that drive?
It was a long drive. It was when the headlights went out. So the lights would flicker on and off, and we were in the middle of Canada. So we'd have headlights and we wouldn't have headlights. So it'd fall in the middle of it. Yeah. Then none of us had a CDL to drive the bus. So we flew our friend up, Lance, and he helped us drive the bus up, and he had a CDL, and the bus ticked. We called it tick tick. Our bus was called Tick Tick. That was our first one. And it always ticked. And it had like a sticky lifter or something that was inside of it. But Tick Tick lasted for like almost 13 years.
Really?
People would get it and they say, hey, we're going to make it in here. Oh, no, it just ticks. It's just a special bus. And,
it sounds like a bomb when it's driving.
And as you go a little faster, it'll get a little louder. Then when you even out, then you go a little lower.
Oh, weird.
So that was our first start off. In 2000, we started with 2 limos and a bus. And we came back and marketed it and talked to people. And I was the guy who was outside the front of the Thursday night the fights with Jim Patton and Jerry and those guys hustling my limos, and my dad and his friends at the petroleum club, they'd take them, and we were kind of making a name for ourselves. And, the other limo companies were pretty helpful back in the day. They wouldn't want to take the trips that they didn't want to take anymore.
They would hand them off to you.
We would get the horrible trips, the 2:00 in the morning that
drunk
somebody would be out in front of Safeway and they had orange boxers on. And I'm like, well, how would I know his boxers? Well, because his pants are down around his boxers. And so we're like, oh, we'll go get him. Is he paying cash? No problem. Just hustling the business.
It's like that was like what would be an Uber these days, right? Like people would have probably taken Ubers back then, but it was like a limo.
People just wanted to go out and not have issues or problems, and we really found it out. I remember on the first limo trips we took, it was Brent and I were taking the limo together because it was the first limo trip, and it was a bachelor.
You guys are in front together.
2 seats up in the front together. You heard these girls talking in the back, and they were talking about girl stuff and things like that. Yeah. And we could hear through it, and they wouldn't know. And they'd say something like off the wall, and Brent and I would just like, we start laughing. They're like, can you guys hear us up there? We're like, no. And they're like, well, you just answered our question. We're like, oh shit. What do we do? So, we just wanted to be part of it and how to learn into it. And one of the things that we really learned when we were in Vegas is that none of the other limo companies had their name on the side of the limo. Nobody did. Everybody just had a plain limo. So you never knew who they were.
Oh, they weren't even leveraging the marketing of their own.
Not logo. Even at all. But when we were there was this company called LVL, Las Vegas Limousine. Mm-hmm. And they had the reef just like ours, and they had an LVL in it. And everywhere you went around, there was this LVL card. But you see all these other limos and nobody would have a name on it. They might have something on the back of a license plate or something like that, personalized plates, but it wasn't there. And I said, Brett, we really need to do that. So when we were thinking of a name, he's like, well, what if we become BAC, Brett and Charlie? Mm-hmm. I said, wow, what about CAB? And he's like, you want to be cab limo? And I'm like, no,
No, a good one. Yeah, that's
so
terrible.
we came up with BAC, Brent and Charlie. So that's how we came up with the name. And we posted them on the windows, we posted them on the doors, and all of a sudden everybody started seeing our stuff. And so they started recognizing that there were limos, and the other companies thought we were crazy for putting our name on it, taking away the view. It's a beautiful car.
Yeah. It didn't look as classy, maybe.
No, but then a year later, they're putting their names on the side of it.
Yeah, exactly.
We were getting all the recognition and everything.
But they were like Alaska Limousine Company or something lame like that. Your logo, I see it all the time, obviously, on your cars around town. It's classy.
Well, it's been traditional. It's been told us we should change it up and make it a little bit more fancy. But it's nostalgic. It's been there for 23 years, so we kind of like it.
And people recognize it.
Yeah, it's a brand.
So
we want to brand it.
Where are you at now with the business? From two, you said 2 limos and a bus to start this whole thing off, and now where are you at?
Like 128 vehicles now.
Holy shit!
Yeah, so it kind of blew up right after we got the 2 limos. We recognized that you need a bigger one, so we got a 10 passenger 6-row, and then the SUV limos started coming out. So then we wanted to be the first one to get an SUV, making not a dime on this thing yet. We're just pouring money into this, but we already had income already coming in from other places, so. We ran down about the first SUV limo to the state of Alaska. It was a Lincoln Navigator SUV. It was a 1999, and we picked it up in 2002. So it was 3 years old. And my wife now, which was my girlfriend back then, Athena, her and I flew to Queens, New York, and picked it up and drove it all the way back. And it was right after 9/11. So it was a year past that time. So we're driving through Queens, and she's like, we got to go see the place. We got to see. I'm like, I am so nervous driving this thing. It's 36 feet long. It's
in New York City.
In New York, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I remember the guy asked him, I'm like, just get me out. Because I could drive anything. I could drive trucks, dump trucks, things like this. But the wheelbase and the turning base is a little bit different. I did have a CDL then, so I could drive it back. And anyways, she talked me into it. So I took the ride at the last minute. She goes, I'm like, how are we going to find this place? And she goes, look for the hole, just basically where there's a hole in the sky is where we're going to be. And we came within a block of it, and we asked somebody where it was. And
wow.
We had, I think, a Polaroid camera with us at the time or something like that.
Yeah.
I remember we ran over, and I think I had what was that phone? It was a flip phone. I can't remember what kind it was.
Like a Razor Motorola.
It wasn't, but it was a Pebble. That's
the
Pebble phone, and it flipped forward, and you could take a picture,
Yeah.
I remember running over there, and I was so nervous because I double parked the limo and seeing it's like, who's going to tow it? It's so big.
Yeah.
Nobody could just tow this thing. And I'm like, I don't care. We can't lose this thing. And so we ran over and looked at the site, took some pictures of all the round sounds, and it was still a big hole in there, and there wasn't anything really. They were still excavating it out. So that was kind of cool. So that was how we got the first SUV limo. You guys kept your day jobs though at that time. 100%. In the very beginning, you were basically just like dumping all the money you made from the limo company back into the limo company, and that was your strategy. So, we hired all of our friends who were drivers.
Interesting.
Everybody we knew that was a part-time driver was somehow affiliated to us. Knew us and stuff like that. We call them up at 10 o'clock at night. We got a limo trip for you. All right, man. It was a lot of fun for people.
So no employees back then, really, to speak of. You just had people.
We did. They were all employees. They were all employed. Yeah, I wouldn't say full time. It was the weekend gigs, it was weddings, it was all this stuff. So we had tons of part time people, like 8, 10, 12 people for 3 or 4 cars. So we'd always have something going on. And I was always the first resort, the last resort. Always had a suit on the corner. Was always hanging up on the rack there, just in case I had to jump into it real quick. Yeah.
So you now have how many employees?
Geez, I think we're 246 employees right now.
246 employees, 128 cars.
126 cars, 128, yeah.
Holy cows.
So, things have changed. I mean, the business got bigger, and, we were a retail market at the very beginning. So all of our work came from weddings, proms, bachelorette parties, all that stuff. And then, we, in 2003, 2004, we started getting called for sedans and SUVs and to work the market for people who want to go around. I thought, wow, there's not much of a market. And my competitor was telling me, he's like, oh, there's no money in this, but he had 8 of them. And I'm like, oh, there's no money. Why do you have these? Oh, I have to have these for these other contracts.
So this is black cars.
Black cars. Yeah. So he used to have town cars were the big thing.
Town cars.
Yeah. And then Cadillacs. Town cars and Cadillacs. So those were the things. So we ended up buying an SUV. And I'd tell you, one of our first celebrity customers we had was Damon Wayans.
Oh, okay.
And Damon came into the Captain Cook, and he was staying here. We had bought an SUV from the government surplus auction, and it was a Tahoe, and it was white. And we tricked it out inside, but the one thing I didn't notice on it when I bought it, it had roll-up windows. It didn't have electric windows, but it had electric locks. And I got this thing, and I'm like, oh, I got to have John from Perfectionist put some electric windows in this. It's gonna be horrible. But he booked it for 5 days. Him and his kid were up here, and I never forget that I was driving around personally because they said they want somebody good. And so became friends with this guy right away. Still have his cell phone number. Still talk to him once in a great while. And we're driving him out there, and he wanted to take some pictures. He was big into photos, and he kept hitting the lock button. He goes, Charles, the window doesn't work. And I said, oh, I said, we have a manual window. And he looked at me like I was from the 1940s. And he goes, manual. And he'd look at me and he'd go, and he rolled the window up and down. He goes, why would you have it? I said, well, it's the snow and ice here really screws at the windows. And so we have to have these manuals. He goes, I think that kind of makes sense. But I've been to other states where there's snow and ice too, Charlie, and they have electric windows. I'm like, oh yeah, we just didn't want to have any problems with our customers and stuff like that.
That's funny.
It was funny. It was
yeah, that's great. So it's great transition into my next question, which is basically like, what kind of challenges do you guys and obstacles do you guys face? Being here in Alaska, I mean, it's so much different, and a lot of your peers and people in the transportation community down south. Just like talk a little bit about what kind of challenges you guys face, or maybe what advantages you have being up here.
It's a double-edged sword. So either way, we have advantages and we have disadvantages. Disadvantages, getting product up here, getting vehicles, shipping them up here, cost of shipping, to get parts up here. I mean, a lot of people never recognize this as a state in the United States. We were Puerto Rico, we were Hawaii, we were somewhere else that wasn't part of the United States. So getting product up here was a little bit difficult. Whenever we bought stuff, I think I drove the Alcon 17 or 18 times bringing stuff up here. So we'd pick something up because it was expensive. I mean, back in the day, it was AML, or now it's AML. It used to be another place, but we'd ship the vehicles, and it was $4, $6, $8 to bring a vehicle up here, especially in any kind of size. So,
yeah. And so for people who don't know, the Alcan is the Alaska highway. It's the highway from the States up to Alaska. It's 2,300 miles.
Yeah. If you come in through Seattle, or if you go to different areas you come into.
And it's pretty rough. It's like, especially at points in the Yukon and way up north, it's like turns to dirt, especially back in the day. I bet it was really bad. Dirt.
I mean,
frost heaves, horrible.
Yeah. We would have to time the gas stations, because in the middle of the winter, the gas stations weren't open 24 hours a day. So you'd have to plan your gas station. I remember getting to a volunteer fire department and begging them to buy some fuel from them. And because we were just out of fuel, we're 2 miles empty, nothing open. We couldn't even make it to the next gas station, and paying $12 a liter for gasoline out in the middle of nowhere, and very kind of this man to do that. We were willing to pay for it.
Well, they're Canadian. They're always too nice.
So, I mean, that was some of the kind of the challenges we had here. And then, working with some partnership here, that was a challenge too. Down in Lower 48, you have a lot of other vendors that you can work with that are in surrounding communities that you can work with and develop relationships. We didn't have that much here. We had a few different ones here, but nobody really worked in the sandbox too well together. I mean, they were helpful in the very beginning, but then as we started growing, they didn't want to be helpful anymore, because we started growing past what they were. So we started getting the contracts and trying to use them. And it was just, it was difficult. It was difficult in the very beginning. And there was no one that you could lean your head on to, because back when the industry started doing it, there was big boys and there was small guys, and we were all small, and we didn't have really the education. So that's why we went to the National Limousine Association. That's why we went to classes. That's why we went to peer groups.
Yeah. Meet the people, learn, ask questions, learn things, workshops.
Figure out what didn't work for them, so we don't have to go through the same woes.
Sure.
Same thing we do for other companies now too.
Yeah. That's cool.
So it did work out. I mean, it worked out very well for us. So that was the bad side. The good side is that we didn't have a lot of competition either. So relationship driven up here. I mean, you know how Alaska is completely relationship driven. So taking care of your customers, taking care of your buddies, taking care of all the other people. We had massive salespeople out there for us. I mean, we worked with the hotels and the concierge, and those guys were pushing stuff to us. So we were always more willing to help them out. When they had events or kids parties or something like that, hey, we'll throw you a limo, no big deal. So that was really nice, because we didn't have a lot of competition, where the Lower 48, you might have 200 companies in San Francisco, and you're competing against that, and everybody's working their way to the bottom,
Yeah.
So I think the pros and cons of that was there. Another con was buying set of tires, trying to navigate 2-wheel drive vehicles in the wintertime up here with 10 people in the back. That was a little bit different. And ice conditions, limos freezing up and can't open the door when people are inside, so you'd have to, sometimes we'd have to go there with a big, huge 5 gallons of hot water and pour it on the door, because the door frame would freeze and we couldn't open it or rip the handles off, so there was some challenges there. So we had to learn to put de-icer in them. We had to put the de-icers in the locks, just learning the tricks of how our weather would do here.
Yeah. And Anchorage is one of the more, warmer climate places versus northern parts of Alaska. Fairbanks got a whole different beast to deal with. So
those were just our bigger challenges that we had in the very beginning. Yeah. Pros and cons
for sure. So now, yeah, with over 200 employees, it's substantial growth. Like that's, I mean, in what, 15, 20 years?
23 years now.
23 years.
Started in 2000.
Yeah.
23 years.
What are some of the things you guys did to grow this business? What were some of because you talked about, one of the early things was putting their logo on the door. Like nobody was doing that. Like what are some of the strategies? I guess we have to mention that Alaska's airport's one of the busiest in the world. Is that correct? Like a cargo airport, and you guys have something to do with that. That's something that Alaska has that's unique, right?
So up here, we couldn't just be one thing. We couldn't just be the limo guy and go any further past that because there's only so many people renting limos.
Yeah,
so, I mean,
totally.
There's only the weekend crowds. There was the double muskie. The double muskie package was probably one of our biggest packages forever that we did for almost 19 years.
Yep.
We still do it. Buy 4 hours, get the 5th hour free. You go down to double muskie.
And you can get reservations.
We worked that out with Bob and Deanna. They were really good about that at double muskie. They knew we were always on time. If we weren't, we were going to call them. So they were very awesome to us and facilitating it. Plus, we brought hundreds of thousands of dollars of people down there that would buy lots of great wine down there because, they didn't have to worry about drinking and driving. So that was a real big plus. And go back to your question. I'm sorry.
The airport. Yeah. Because that's kind of where your business has recently kind of exploded. I think.
Well, tourism got really big too. So tourism was helpful. So, everything happens by chance. But one night I was not feeling so good. This is before we had a 24-hour dispatch center that we had our employees answering the phone 24 hours a day. So Brent or I would, Brent, I think was out of it at that time. One of us would take home the phone. And the phones would be forwarded to us. So we were answering 24 hours a day. So we get people call us 3 months in advance for an airport transfer from Seward to Anchorage for something that was coming up 3 months in advance. And it was 8 a.m. their time, 4 a.m. our time.
And did you guys have a scheduling system at that point?
Yeah, so we did. We printed it off because we didn't have, right now we're averaging anywhere from 250 to 325 trips a day. So back then, we might have had for the whole month 35 trips on the schedule. So we just had to print out a schedule and tell us what was taken, what times it was. And you just take home a new piece of paper every night, a couple of pieces of paper, and you'd be able to look at it and see what's available. And
it's all analog.
It was totally analog, with the flip phone again, we weren't, I don't even think we're with I think we ended up getting, what was the phones that had little keypads on before the iPhones?
Oh, the BlackBerry?
The BlackBerry. Yeah. That was just revolutionary.
Yeah.
So, we take the phone home at night. And I remember one night I got a phone call and I wasn't feeling so good. And my phone rang and it was an unusual number. And I was like, BAC Transportation, how can I help you? And she's like, hi, this is World Airways. And I'm like, oh, how can I help you? And she's like, hey, we need some help with some transportation. Are you guys interested in doing crew transportation? We had been pitched quite a few times for crew transportation. I'm like, oh, we're more of a black car service. We do, this kind of stuff. And I know that you guys don't really pay that well and do this. And she goes, we have a government contract. We think we pay pretty well. And I'm like, well, what's that number look like? She's like, I really don't want to tell you, but we need some help with transportation. I'm like, for me to be interested, I have to even know what you guys are considering. And we had this 15, 20-minute conversation. And she said, yeah, she's like, we right now we're paying $120 transfer. And we were only getting $95 an hour for our black car back then. I'm like, really? And plus gratuity and fuel surcharge. And so it's right around the same rate. I'm like, how many transfers do you have? And she's like, we do like 20 or 30 a week for the inbound and outbound crews. I'm like, I'm totally interested. What can we do? She goes, you have base access. And I said, no, but I can get base access with a sponsor. She goes, well, we have some trips tonight. Would you like to start? And I'm like, well, what happened to your vendor? I'm like, now I'm scheduled and we're start doing trips from them. And World Airways was one of the longest cargo ones, and they were also crew transportation. So what they did is they subbed out to the military and took troops over there, and they took their cargo over there too. But they would have passenger flights and cargo flights. So we were handling both sides. We were handling the air crews for the cargo, and then we were handling all the flight attendants on the other one. So vans were required, all this other stuff. So I'll never forget just working with those guys. It was the hardest contract ever. I was like, how is crew so tough? Because we wouldn't get a whole lot of notice, and then they would change things all the time, and we were constantly working the same reservation.
The flight's delayed, whatever
4 or 5 times. Yeah. And so we took them on, and they started flying in Anchorage, and we were trying to get access to Anchorage Airport. And to get on the tarmac there, you had to have at least 2 people you work for. So we couldn't get that at first. And so some other contracts came up, and we had them for about 1.5 years, 2 years. And some people recognized that we're doing crew transportation. And I remember going after the Alaska Airlines contract, which was going to be the big one. And I think we've had them since 2004, 2005.
What all does that include?
That was one of the biggest contracts of the airport. It was all the inbound flights, all the outbound flights. So it was all their captains, flight attendants, everybody coming in. And then anybody that was scheduled to come up here to catch it. So if like you had a D flight attendant that came up here to catch another flight tomorrow, we'd pick up that one person, take them to the captain cook. They've always stayed at the captain cook. And and we didn't win it. I was like super bummed. I was like, oh, you got to be kidding me. I thought our numbers were good and we didn't win it. So we're still doing world, and we're doing some one-offs, some other ones. And about 2 months later, I was at the ATIA, Alaska Tourism Industry Association. I was at a event in Juneau, and I got a phone call from the girl from Alaska Airlines. And I kept her phone number in there, and I'm like, hey, how's it going? And she's like, good. And she's like, Charlie, are you still interested in taking on our contract? And I said, well, what's going on? She's like, our other vendor, it just doesn't get the Alaska Airlines way. And they had been doing some other ones, and we thought they'd be able to get it together, but they didn't. So basically she said, how big is your fleet? What's going on? Can we go up and meet? So they flew up that next week, did a site visit in there, and we took them on. And I remember the other vendor came over and brought me a bottle of cider, and he says, good luck with this. They are just so tough to work with. And he handed me a bottle of cider and just said, good luck with it. And I was like, wow, so what am I getting myself into? And so they gave the crews our telephone number. Of course, I'm the one-man show still. I'm answering the phone at nighttime. And
what year was this?
2005, I think.
Oh, okay, so this is pretty early in the business.
This is 4 or 5 years into the business. Yeah, we're just on our second.
Would you say this was one of the biggest turning points of the business? This whole thing.
It was. I mean,
looking back,
well, the biggest turning point was taking World Airways on, which was the hardest airline we ever had. I mean, in the history of all of our
they primed you for any other.
Yeah, so everything else was easy. If we would have took on Alaska Airlines and then took on a World, we'd have fired them a long time ago. It was just, there's no way we were.
But you guys had no perspective when you took on
zero. We had zero perspective of what was going on, so we had no idea. So when we took on Alaska, they had a schedule. They sent it to us. There was very few changes. I mean, the captains or flight attendants might change, but there wasn't this craziness of everything else. So we took them on, and the funny thing is they were so used to the other company not showing up on time or being 20 minutes late or sending a cab to go pick them up that they would call as soon as they hit the ground. They call and they say, "Is our van there?" Yeah, because it was cold. And they didn't want to sit out in the cold in the winter. I'm like, I don't know. Is it not there? Because I'm panicking. Why is my van driver not there? So we had two-way radios back then. So I was calling him on the two-way radio. I'm like, hey, van 2, where are you guys at? And he's like, we're right out here waiting for him, Charlie. I'm like, well, they don't see you. And I called the person back. She goes, oh, we're not even off the airplane yet. We just want to make sure the van's there. I'm like, well, call me if it's not there. Don't call me if it's there. And she's like, well, they said this is a 24-hour dispatch line. I'm like, well, it is, but it really isn't, if it's not there. So it took about 3 months for the regulars to come up here to realize that we were always there. We were always on time. We were always taking it. And one of the things for our success for that was we would listen to the crew and to the airline flight attendants and the captains. And, they don't get a whole lot of time off. The time they land, the time they back up in the air is usually 8 to 10 hours. They have the mandatory give them 8 hours off. But if we're 20 or 30 minutes late, now all of a sudden they're sucked into that 8 hours. So they of course, they got to detune, get off and go to bed and then re-rake up, get themselves made up again. And
it's a big deal.
Food. Yeah. So for time for them was like worth gold. So we really realized that. So we were always trying to be on time, be there 5 minutes earlier from the flight. And then we tweaked those times and, they felt much more comfortable. So I didn't get many phone calls at all.
What would you say? How does that work with those contracts? How did you know, it was such a big deal, going 3 years into the business, you get this World Air thing and then Alaska Air now, how did you, I guess on the sales side, how did you sell them on yourselves when you really didn't know what you were doing technically at that point, right?
Well, there was 4 of us doing it there. There was Airline Support Services. There was Alaska Splendor was the other gentleman that had the contract before us. And then there was Pegasus and then Swissport. There was 5 of us doing it. And a lot of the other air crews really never wanted to do it, but they did it because they got the maintenance on the plane or they got something else. It was a loss leader for them.
Oh, I see. They had other auxiliary businesses that they were making money on, mechanics or whatever.
You take Swissport or Pegasus, both great companies. We're partners with both of them. We work with both those guys. They would take on the crew, which they didn't really want to do the crew because they had to have vans and all this stuff. But the other guy might be changing out the food inside there. They might be the food person that was doing it. So then he switched over and gets a van, or it might be the person that was changing the toilet, So you had the lavatory people that were doing it. And then the guy would have blue hands and they'd jump in the van and take him over to the airport. So it wasn't somebody that was always set to do those things.
Yeah. That's why it was so willy-nilly.
Yeah. So that's why when we took it over, we had clean vans, we had clean vehicles. We started with the first ones doing the sprinters and the vans. And
so it was more of a timing thing and the fact that you guys were actually niching down into this category and not trying to do it as a side business.
Yeah. So we were saying, hey, we're focused on you guys. Timeliness, driving, all this stuff is what our focus is. We don't land planes. We don't tug them. We don't supply your food. We concentrate on your transportation. That's what we're going to do.
So that's kind of how you sold them on this. Yeah. Was sort of we're going to be here for you guys when you need us, timely, this is what we do.
And one of the niches about being in Alaska, again, is there wasn't a whole lot of people that were into that business. You go down to the lower 48, and there might be 20 companies that do that, so they were more apt to work with us and do it. And, just like them and anybody else, once you have a good contractor, you don't want to lose it. And as long as the prices don't get out of line or things like that, they don't want to go reinvent the wheel if it's already there. So that's why you hold these contractors. We've been in Alaska since 2005. So, 18 years we've had Alaska Airlines contracts. So they don't put it back up for rebid unless there's something that's just grossly wrong, or we have tickets that are unruly. Tickets are a problem if you don't show up in time or something happens that they put in there, and we have to request for information why we weren't there.
Was that contract just originally just crew transportation, or did it include lost baggage, the wheelchair? Talk a little bit about the auxiliary stuff and how that came about.
So, taking them on for quite some time, the crew transportation, we would go in and meet with some of the managers and talk about what's going on. We fleet with the flight crews, the managers for the captains and stuff like that. If we ever had a problem, then we worked with them more. And then the station managers, they were calling us if lights were there or have to go pick up people. And so they were telling us about some other problems, that they were having some other contracts, and we asked if we were ever interested in taking anything else on with them and doing some other stuff. And of course, we listen for business opportunities, and we listen and say, what's that mean? What does that look like? And
yeah,
I remember, I think the first one that came up was, I'm not sure if it was bags first. No, it was bags first. Yeah, the baggage delivery. And they have these bags that need to be delivered, and they were having some problems with their current vendor, and they need some help with the baggage claim. And so we said, well, what's that look like? How does that do it? And so we set up some times and did a little bit more organization into it. And Athena, my wife, of course, she was, instrumental in organization of that side. And we set up pickup times to do it, and started setting up vehicles to deliver bags. And we were delivering bags with the Denali up to Valdez, up to Glen Allen, down to Seward, down to Homer. I'm like, holy smoly, we need more vehicles. We do 4 bag pulls a day, and you could have 2 bags, 1 bag, 0 bags, or 25 bags, or 72 BDOs. You take 12 bags to one person's house, so you load the whole entire van up. You're like, oh man, this is a lot of work, but it was good. It was getting us out, it got our name out. And so we did really good with that for 4 or 5 years. And then the wheelchair contract came up, and they were looking for a new vendor for the wheelchair contract. And we talked to them and asked them what that meant and what it looked like. And we kind of went over the numbers and went over that. And so we put in for the wheelchair contract. So the one vendor became our biggest vendor. Alaska Airlines was our biggest vendor that we worked for. I mean, we did their crew transportation. We did their baggage claim delivery. And then we did their, what we call, we have ambassadors to take care of their wheelchair accessibility.
Yeah.
Their ADA contract. So yeah, so that was another 50 employees that we put outside that. Getting 40 wheelchairs. I mean, wheelchairs are $1,000 a piece. We had no idea about this business, but we did a lot of research onto it. We had to come up with proposals. We had to come up with our action plan, take care of all that with the airport, and had to meet all the ADA compliances. And so it was a lot of work. Now, we already did wheelchair contract for Providence Regional and AMC.
Oh, you had already had that experience.
We have already been doing
point to.
Yeah. So it was a little bit different, picking them up in a wheelchair and actually taking them there, people that couldn't walk or need accessibility to go to appointments and things like that. So we already had a little bit of experience in this. This was just running it within the airport. There was no vehicles that we had to put them into. It was point to point,
Got it. That's crazy. That sounds just like a huge turning point for your business, getting that Alaska Airlines contract. Looking back now, seeing what that business is, are they still your guys' biggest account?
They're one of our top 5.
Yeah.
They're one of our top 5. There are some other accounts that have come up that are higher revenue, grossing ones that are inside there now, but they're one of our top 5 accounts.
Would you say that was one of the biggest turning points for your business, bringing on Alaska Airlines? Or
I mean,
in terms of credibility too for you guys. I mean, to take a national, a huge airline on like that everybody knows.
Yeah, I mean, especially locally. I mean, that was that's our airline. I mean, that was, Delta United, all those other guys are here, American, but they weren't near the force that Alaska Airline was. Yeah. So even we've been approached by other vendors to go take care of their wheelchair accessibility, but Alaska Airlines is 80% of it. And I was going to give up 80 to go pick up 20. That was, if you start splitting your crews up, then all of a sudden you lose 80% for 20%. Didn't make any sense.
So some early challenges that you maybe faced, I don't know, you've shared some things with me personally, but it just, any kind of hurdles or things that you kind of ran into that were, that kind of felt like, oh shit, is this going to end, or is this going to end our business, or is this, are we going down? Is the ship going down? Like, was there any situations along the way where you just kind of were like, hey, might not work, or you got yourself in a bad way?
I can tell you the one thing that was probably the toughest thing was your 941s and your taxes. I mean, that was one of the biggest failures for companies is your 941s is paying your taxes on there. So, they do it quarterly or you do it, bi-monthly, whatever else it was. And, you always have something that would come up and you kick that down the side and all of a sudden you had a 20% interest on top of it. Then all of a sudden you had the fines and the penalties. And so we got a little bit of a tax problem issues that came into it. And it was a little bit of a tough hurdle to jump over to. And I always tell companies that one of the biggest things you can do is like, if you had to pay the IRS, you had to buy medication for your kid, pay the IRS before the medication. You can always pay the IRS off and then take a loan to go and buy the medication.
It's funny because I'm in this situation. I'm filling out these, they're doing audits on my 941s for my business. And I'm like, this is the first business I've ever owned. So it's a little scary because I'm like, did I pay enough? Is my payroll taxes on where it's supposed to be? I don't know. So these are all things that you learn. So you had the same kind of epiphany.
Yeah,
like, just pay these guys, pay them too much.
Went on a payment program with them, ended up paying way over. I mean, if we owed $100,000, we paid them $220,000 back. Their interest rates, they always made a joke and talked to us about it. Said, hey, if you have to go borrow money from us, or you can go borrow it from Guido down the street, it might break your arm. Guido's a better person to buy from. he will just break your arm. He just won't take you to jail, or he won't take your business away.
Oh my God.
So it was that was one of the hurdles. Employees are a hurdle. Working with everybody's schedule. I mean, being new into businesses and running them and running cars and vehicles and crashes and, drug policies and all the different things you had to run into when you became a CDL vehicle. Now, all of a sudden, all your drivers had to be in a random drug testing program. The city had a random drug testing program.
How did the partner that you had originally, how did that kind of go away? Can you talk a little bit about like the transition from him, the ownership and how that worked, and getting him sort of bought out or whatever it looked like?
Yeah. So Brent was really great. I think this is more my dream than it was his. Brent was awesome about it. We went in together, and in our first 4 or 5 years, we didn't make a whole lot of money. We basically just stuck the money back into it. We were the first ones to bring the H2 Hummer limo up here. That was 3 years after we bought our first limos. That took off like a rocket. We did a show with Bob and Mark on the way coming up here. We were having them talk about our limo all the way up. So it was really good. Brent changed some things in his life that were going on in his life. He had recently got engaged and was getting married, and my girlfriend and myself, which is now my wife, Athena, we were gung-ho. We were a little bit more there. He didn't, it wasn't his forte. Brent's great in real estate. He's great in property management, stuff like this. So he gave me a great opportunity to buy him out. And basically it was just buying out what we owned in the stock, splitting everything just in half. So he made a great deal at that time. He let me pay it off in 1.5 years. And so we were able to split ways that way and be able to take it. So it was a great thing for us. I'm very, very thankful that he did that.
Yeah, that's cool, because you hear so many horror stories about ownerships breaking up and then having it be this horrible turmoil where it breaks the company. So
sure.
It's good to hear a good story like that. Talk a little bit about, I know you guys have a strong company culture. If you can talk a little bit about like how that company culture plays out in your business and what it looks like and what your guys' values are. Sort of how do you maintain a level of service that you do, and what does that look like to do that?
I think it's our team. Our team is the ones that are really good into putting that together. Again, I can't give enough accolades to Athena. I mean, she's the one that came up with the company culture, and I'm more the let's go. We can take this on. We can do this stuff. And yeah,
it's funny. If you don't create a company culture exists either way. And it could be bad and it could be good.
It can turn left or it can turn right.
And especially with all the growth you guys have had, to maintain that is an amazing feat. And I know she's done some things to really push that forward and make sure that people know how we treat people, what kind of service you guys give. So
it wasn't always there. I can tell you in the very beginning years, it was like, there had been shout fests between shivers and stuff like this. But yeah, when she came on, she really wanted to bring a company culture. Like I said, your culture will start itself. It'll be a good one or it'll be a bad one, and so you have the choice to steer that boat. Yeah. And so we steered it the right way. And, basically just treating the employees good, trying to take care of them, trying to do things, trying to listen to what their needs are. We found out money wasn't the most important thing. They wanted to have a say at the game, what was going on, driving newer vehicles, making sure the vehicles were maintained, making sure that they had time off for family. I mean, we could work somebody to 80 hours all the time. 80 hours is the maximum hours we can make somebody work, but we can work that out all day long because we have so much work. But then we had to learn how to say no to people. We had to learn to know that they had to have a life too on top of that. It wasn't all about the almighty dollar all the time. It was about having a stable life for them and make sure that they can go home and see their wife and kids and stuff like that too. So,
but they also wanted to say in like what was going on. Some employees want a sort of to say like, hey, we want to have nicer cars, or we want to have a certain, benefits or whatever it is. You got to give that to them a little bit, right?
Well, that was a really tough thing to do is, when we got over 50 employees, we had to provide health insurance. I mean, health insurance was no joke at then. And so you had to pay a certain percentage. So it was a leap for us at that time because we were starting to do fairly well. Then all of a sudden you bring that up and you have 75, 80 employees and you're putting out, so much money per everyone. But we saw the benefit in it. We saw how people reacted when they had health benefits, and maybe more long-term than we were a part-time job. So then we saw that. So we implemented a 401k now. So we have a 401k and so now we have paid time off. So all these things came in a line. Mm-hmm. It's almost impossible to do it all at one time. It takes time and you have to have steps involved to it because 401k is forever. I mean, that's as long as we own it, or if somebody was ever to buy us out or something like that, that would have to all transfer over. So huge plans to figure out which one to pay for. How's that pay? What plans do we do for insurance? Are people looking for major medical, or are they looking for everything? What does that cost? How much is that going to cost our employee plus what we're going to put into it?
So taking care of employees is a big part of your guys' culture. Taking care of your people.
In realizing that we want to keep and have longevity people, that's where you have to
long
be. Long term. Yeah. If you look for the short game, you can find people all day long.
Yeah.
If you're looking for the long game, you can't. I mean, we have some employees who've been with us 10, 12 years now, and they've been with us since they've seen all the changes that we've come into, to renting buildings, to being in bigger buildings, to now owning our own building, to doing the remodels in our building, giving a nice place to stay, bathrooms, bidets. We have bidets in our bathrooms for our employees.
I love those things. By the way,
we have a slogan: "Clean ass matters." So we just want people to know that they're cared about, and giving them a good place to heat their food up and drink, and have their food set up for refrigerators. I mean, just a nice culture for them to work in.
Well, we haven't really talked about Alaska Medical Transport, which is a business you started, I think it was over COVID or like around that time, 2019, maybe?
Yeah. So Alaska Medical Transport was a division of BAC. So BAC used to do the wheelchairs version of it. And then we kind of switched it out in like 2016 or 17. We did the wheelchair side of it. So there was just wheelchairs with BAC in it.
And maybe we can back up a little bit because I want to hear a little bit about your background in firefighting and in the medical industry.
So love EMS and fire. I mean, big component of EMS fire. I joined the Cordova Fire Department at a very early in age. When I was in there, I was explorer for the Sheriff's Department in California. I like law enforcement, EMS, all that stuff. So was on the North Star Volunteer Fire Department, was on the Valdez Fire Department.
This was all before you started your business or during the BAC times?
Cordova, Valdez, all that stuff was pre-BAC, pre any of that stuff. So was North Star Volunteer Fire Department. I was a living volunteer firefighter there, EMT. So
this is kind of close to your heart.
Yeah, I like the EMS fire world. It's really, it's a calling. You have to have that bug. I mean, it's just not something. It's like a job. You really care about it. So, so we got into it. I was a safety officer for Grimm Fire Department. I was lucky enough to be picked in 2005. I went through the Anchorage Fire Department Academy, and I spent 3.5 months of my life with all the 2005 class. There was another person that was a captain, Pat. He went through it with us with Grimm also, and they allowed us a couple spots to go through there. And we had to go through the same exact training as AFD did. And we went through every single thing that they did, all their training, all their other stuff there. So we started it in September and ended in December. So we graduated their class and got our badges and did our hats. We were already members of our department already. So when our chief came out there and made a big thing of it. So that was a real fun thing. So enjoyed that. So it's always been a passion of mine. Then we had kids and things happened and we took time off it. My wife was on the department too. So she was an EMT and she was also a BLS instructor. And then she was a firefighter. And we're to be on a fire with your wife.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So she would be
Athena.
Athena. So she was an EMT. She was getting her EMT too at the time, and she became pregnant. And then she was teaching classes, and all the way up until like her 8th month in pregnancy, she left the department at that time. But yeah, she was. We worked a couple of structure fires together, and
Cool.
Fun. Yeah.
And so now you guys just started, you were already, you had the contracts for these wheelchair transportation. And then at what point did you decide to like buy some ambulances and just get into it? Like, how did that come about?
So our town really only had one vendor at the time. And it used to be TransCare back in the day. And then they turned into LifeMed, and LifeMed was the biggest vendor here. And
still a big player.
Huge player. I mean, LifeMed, Guardian, we have some really great ambulance companies here in town that do air medevac too. And so some of our hospitals are saying that it was just really tough to get ambulances sometimes, and they didn't need them for medical care. They needed it more for just doing patient transport. They were bedbound. They didn't really need medical. So we said, well, if we picked up a couple, we have EMS experience. What would this look like if we did non-emergency ambulance service? Oh, we give you patients all day to go to appointments. They don't need to be on O2. They already have a monitor. They already have a person that goes with them, an escort, and you can get in that side. So we said, okay. So Athena and I started looking at ambulance. Of course, I don't do anything just a little. I bought one ambulance. I found another company was selling 3 more. So I bought 4 ambulances within with 28 days. I think we bought 4 ambulances, and here we are dreaming about Alaska. Yeah, another venture. And Athena was on board, and she was there. And so, she was teaching at a conference for Limo Anywhere. She was teaching about Limo Anywhere at one of our NLA shows. And I said, I bought the first one in Oklahoma, and I drove it to Texas where she was, and we were going to drive it back. And I found 3 more in, Billings, Montana. And I bought those online, and I'm like, oh, I won this. I won all 3 of them. Oh no. And so how are we going to get all these back? So we drove from there, Texas, all the way up to Billings, picked up another ambulance, drove it over to Seattle, flew back to Billings, picked up the other 2 and drove them back to Seattle too. And we got our first 4 ambulances. That happened right before COVID, and that was in September, October. We got them, and then we got them back here, and we got them all painted up and wrapped up, made them look beautiful. Non-emergency ambulances. They still had all the emergency lights on them, but we didn't act as that. We had some EMTs that worked for us, but we didn't run under a medical thing. So we just did everything non-emergency. COVID happened, and we got busy. We got busy real quick. Our cabs were separated by the cabin, and we had a little window there. So we made partitions in between the windows, so we were able to take care of patients. And then we got the same PAPRs that AFD did, and we got all these different things, and we started becoming the COVID people. And then all the airlines were using us, and we were sometimes doing 20, 25 transfers a day.
What timing, huh?
Perfect timing.
This is one of the industries that was, flooded with business when COVID happened versus other businesses that were shut down. Now we need transportation. We need to transport these people. You're the guy to do it.
Well, so once we felt more comfortable with what we're doing and what was going on with COVID, we got the proper gear, the proper PPE for all of our medics. We started getting the BAC guys on board, and we started teaching them how to do it. So we were doing motor coaches full of COVID people. We were doing there was a trolley that came in that couldn't find a home, and everybody on board the trolley ship, even the EMT that was on board, were all sick with COVID.
On the ferry?
No, it wasn't a ferry. It was a trolley. It was a fishing trolley.
A trawler.
Yeah, and they were trying to find a port to do, and nobody would let them in the port.
Because they all had COVID. 90 of them had COVID. Yeah.
No town could handle that.
Yeah.
And they ended up coming in Seward, and Seward was really good. And they let them park at the dock. And I remember having 2 motor coaches there, and I was in a full.
Well, yeah, that's when you're
full. I was in a full.
It was like a
hazmat
space suit. I remember seeing the pictures of
the
it.
Sperm suits, yeah. And I was in there. I was taped up, and he was taped up.
Oh, that was hilarious.
We had the PAPR on, and I am cooking in this thing. I'm in this. I'm
this is in the middle of summer.
Of summer. These guys are getting off of shorts and tank shots.
Yeah.
Like, you guys need to put something more. We got the AC down to 64 degrees. You guys don't want me overheating over the pass. We're going to come over this pass. I don't want to pass out because I'm so hot.
Yeah.
So I turned that PAPR on full blast, and I had not worn the PAPR in a 3-hour period, 3.5-hour period. So the cab was so cold that the air was coming into my PAPR cold, and my face was blue. I was freezing. I was so cold.
You probably look like a crazy person.
I was so cold, but I was breathing this cold air. And I remember in the back, everybody was freezing back there because I had like 65 degrees back there. So they were all like bundled up. And I remember turning my heat up a little bit in the front cab. I'm turning the heat up. And this guy up front looks at me, and he runs up front, and he goes, "You have heat up here, but we're in ice box back here. Will you turn the heat up?" I'm like, "Yeah, let me turn it up a little bit for you." And they were all so freezing because I was worried I was going to get too warm, wearing that thing plus that suit. And so we ended up started doing transportation for all the different airlines, all the oil companies. We were at every flight that came in.
All the COVID transfers.
We had a good
taking them to hotel, like the places where they would just quarantine.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're really lucky. We were able to ride that train for about a year and a half, 2 years, and that really when a lot
That
of people
catapulted you guys a little bit.
it did. It
as a
helped us
business.
out.
Yeah.
During
A
the
new
COVID
business.
times, at the COVID times, BAC and Alaska Medical Transport did very well, and we were authorized to go places where people couldn't. We were called by the city, we were called by the state, we were called by the airlines, by the oil companies. We were getting a lot of work with that, and it was a risk for us. We really had to talk to our employees and really do that. We had to bump up their wages, and we had to take some times, but. And that time we were still hiring when everybody else was laying people off and they didn't have jobs. So they were so thankful that we were, and we were one of those companies that were surviving. And it was really Athena and I going through and just really looking at it, saying, what do we have here? Talking to the doctors, talking to other people and saying, what do we really deal with? If we have proper precautions, are we going to be good?
So business before COVID. So from the beginning of your starting BAC to COVID and then COVID after, where was the biggest growth, would you say?
Where our biggest push was?
Yeah, like where, like it seems like that COVID catapulted you guys into another level of business to some extent. You guys went from how many employees did you have? Like in 2020, it was like maybe 110.
I think we're 115, 120.
Yeah.
And then when it really got busy again, we couldn't get any past 129 because nobody wanted to work.
Yeah, nobody wanted to work.
Free money from the government, so nobody really wanted to work. So
but now you have 220 plus employees. Yeah.
So I mean, crew transportation is huge for us. So we're not we used to be 100% was retail business. That was our we started.
It was all the limo buses and the parties
work,
and night work and weekend work.
Now we're 85% all corporate. I mean, everything we do is mostly corporate. We chase after corporate. We still do all of the we do the transfers for tourism. We do the cruise ships. We do all that stuff. We do motor coaches for them. But a lot of our business is corporate work. I mean, corporate is easier. Usually it's, your client you're always dealing with. You know who the people are. They call up, they want this. You know how to work with them. It's relationship driven. Our retail business could be one guy. It's a one-off that comes up here from Australia, and he's up here and he takes a 6-hour trip from you. It's your one-time client. Great client still.
Yeah.
But our book of business mostly is corporate.
That's
So the airline,
crazy.
we maintain probably 92% of all the airlines at the airport and all the airport work that comes up there for all the crew transportation. There's only a few that we don't have. And that gets narrower and narrower, so there's not a lot of people who want to do that work and don't have it down pat. We have 47 vans dedicated to crew transportation. We have a software system. We have all the GPSs on the vehicles. I mean, we know.
Yeah, I was going to ask you a little bit about you guys' tech stack and like what you guys use. Obviously, we talked about the analog ages without cell phones and without this software that exists now for scheduling and the calls and just talk a little bit about the technology you guys leverage for transportation right now and how that's changed your business.
We are technology driven. We really are. We're lucky. We have a son that's in technology. My wife is in technology. We go to technology groups. We've gone to a group called 2020 group. It's called Spinning Wheels. We always learn this from our other vendors. And so I remember when we started getting our first 4-wheel drive, they were Quigley vans, and they used to be old prisoner transport vans. But we took all the bars out the windows, and they were great Quigley vans. We get them with under 100,000 miles.
What are you calling it?
A Quigley van was like the first 4-wheel drive vans. Quigley was a company that would take a conversion van, like a Ford or a Chevy van, and they put the 4-wheel drive into it. They jack it up a little bit, and they still use them in this time now. They're made by Quigley.
Is this supposed to be like what was Sprinter before Sprinter vans existed, like customization and things like that exist?
No, basically all they did was change out the hardware down below. So you'd make a 2-wheel drive into a 4-wheel drive van, and it was a Quigley conversion. And you have the old shifters like the K515 Blazers. You'd have that shifter right down there on the bottom, and you'd be able to have 4-wheel drive. I mean, they were huge. And I remember buying small little mini laptops with Wi-Fi cards. And our drivers would have that, and they could look at the trips that were coming up in there. And because we switched over to a new limo system, we used to have this thing called Limo Whiz. It was such a low system, but it was all we knew at the time. Then Limo Anywhere came out, and we're one of their biggest users. Athena's on the board of directors for Limo Anywhere.
And this is software that helps you guys schedule trips.
All of our trips. It pays our pay. It pays all the trips that we do. It has all the info that we need to maintain trips and It takes all of our payments, everything for it. So it's a really great thing. So then we used to carry two-way radios, and the radios would go dead and bad. And we used to have the tablets, and then we switched to iPads, and then the iPads had integrated radios with Zello, and then we'd use a Zello program, and now it's all integrated. So I can be in Thailand talking to my guys here in town on two-way radios back and forth from Thailand because it's all internet based. And then we had the auto starts, and then we had the drones put in from Perfections from John. And, he would have all these things and put them inside there. So if somebody locked themselves out on the tarmac because a pilot actually hit the lock button, we're parked in front of a 747 out there. Bringing spare keys out there is 25 minutes, Our dispatcher would be able to get online, open that car from a touch from a keypad. It's just open the door up, unlock it, and do that stuff. So we always were technology driven. We still are to this day. We get new systems all the time that are in there for timekeepers, payroll, all the stuff we make. And, we get into a nice system for 2 or 3 years and something better comes out. And now it's going to take 6 systems and put it into one system, but we're going to be able to do all 6 of it. So now we kind of switch that thing. So we're always switching things.
Yeah, you guys are always on the cutting edge. I can definitely attest to that for sure.
And I am not a techie guy. So it's like everybody's have to come and reprogram my computer, my phones, and all this.
Yeah, but the thing about you, Charlie, is you're open to it. And I think that's what makes you different. And being open to things, expose you to things you wouldn't be exposed to normally. And putting people on your team too that are into these things is tremendous for you. So that's been a huge part of your guys' growth, I think, the technology side.
I love the younger generation because they're so good at that. I remember back in the day, my dad couldn't hook up the VCR or the DVD player, and he's like, "Son, would you hook this up?"
You had to do it for him.
The red, green, blue. You just put those things. It was so easy. Now I feel
that's
like
how people. Dad, that's how people see it now. Young people are like, "Oh yeah, I can do that. That's easy."
2 seconds. My daughter. I remember my uncle came over and visited. My daughter's like, "You don't know how to do this," and she's 9 years old and takes his iPhone and puts it there. He's like, "I just got schooled by a 9-year-old." But that's it. That's
the age we're living. Now we have AI, all this machine learning stuff that's going to change the world forever. And I think people just don't know how it's going to affect, but I certainly think, some effects will come on the transportation industry that are really super interesting from AI because it can anticipate and predict and better than most human beings could ever dream of. So
I just got to play with AI at our last conference in Nashville. And Robin, I never forget, she put out some words and she did a BAC Transportation one and wrote a letter that was so superb. And I'm like, where is this back in school? We had to do reports. I mean, all the different things that you could whip it out. I mean, it whipped out words I wouldn't even know to say or put it into that sentence. It was amazing.
It's unbelievable. It's going to change a lot of things, but we won't really know it for a few more years here. What some keys to success, just looking back, sort of, some of the things you guys did that maybe move the needle way more than other things, or things that you guys implemented that helped to spur other things that kind of helped you get to where you are today, success wise, just for people listening that are maybe looking, for some inspiration or something that really, they can implement in their business potentially. Is there anything you could think of that, I know I'm putting on the spot here, but that may be a key to your success, or maybe some small things that people can think about doing that would help them?
Always taking care of the client or your friends, or they became friends, they became colleagues, they became their relationship driven. I mean, our business is so relationship driven. We meet with our vendors, we talk with them, we sit down at the table with them, ask what's going on. I think that's a huge part of our success is we listen, and we're not sending our general managers out there. We're not sending our supervisors out there. I go sit at the table with them.
Charlie's going to be there.
I was there. I mean, and I'm there less now because we have more of a management team that's there. So your span of control can be only so big by yourself with Athena and myself doing it all.
Yeah. It's crazy that you talk about it, because I think about this a lot. And at the end of the day, no matter what business you're in, you're almost always people creating things for other people that are helping other people. It's just all a big circle of people helping each other. And so by having that relationship thing, in your mind, and knowing that is what helps drive business, just listening to people, acknowledging what they say, and creating a system or a process that helps them develop, or achieve what they're trying to achieve. That's something that's super important and close to my heart. I think it's it gets overlooked a lot. People think that technical skills or some skill they have in some realm or knowledge they have is going to beat out soft skills that allow you to connect with people. And I think you pointed at it, and that's my key to success as well. If I could give people advice, it's like, stop worrying about, the technical stuff as much as just getting to know people and developing those relationships.
Yeah. We're let's say we're a dying breed, but we're more of that breed that our group of people and our ages and the ones before us and after us and before, they love to have that hands on. I still get calls from my clients from 20 years ago that says, "Hey, Charlie, I need a limo. Hey, Charlie, I need a limo." And for me to type up a limo contract would just be horrendous. I would make so many mistakes. And so I'm like, "Oh, okay, what do you need?" And I'll talk to them. I said, "Hey, I'm going to have Sarah call you right away. Or I'm going to have Mike call you. I'm going to have one of my people call you and just get this taken care of, because if you want me to put this on the computer, it's going to be all screwed up. I'm not going to pick it the right place. I apologize. I'm not that person." But I still get those people that call me today. I still get calls for requests for me to drive. I still have clients that still say, "Charlie, I need you to drive tonight." I'm like,
I've seen you driving before. I've seen you drive, and not so much this year as much as in the past. But
last year was huge. And last year we had a huge growth. We were at 68% growth last year. But yeah, I don't drive near as much anymore, but I will. I carry my badges, my IDs all with me to get into all the bases, to the airports, all that stuff. And I'm the first or last to go out, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
The airline diversions that we do for the airport, I mean, that's a huge part of what we do. We do 34 to 48 diversions there. Any airline that comes down that has a mechanical or a medical that comes down that can't refly, we book all their hotel rooms, we book all their transportation.
Oh, you do the whole thing,
food,
soup to nuts.
Everything. I mean, everything from the time they call us to landing on the tarmac, we take care of all of it.
Yeah, because sometimes when I talk to you, you're like, "I've been up since 3 a.m. You're doing it, you're grinding it."
But that's part of it. They know I'm going to show up on scene, so they know I'm going to take care of it, and they know that's going to be taken care of. And all those managers, all those people that run Alaska Airlines, all the soups have my phone number. All those people know they can call me anytime, and I'm going to get to the bottom of whatever's going on.
You said you guys saw 68% growth last year.
Yeah.
What drove that? What was it?
There's a couple of big things. There was a couple of big contracts that came up last year. We had a big contract with a COVID contract that nobody really wanted to take, that was on there that we were asked to take on. It was helping one of the big tourism companies up here, taking care of their people. I'm not going to mention.
Yeah. They're COVID patients.
Yeah. And it was everything from the point in time they got here to the time they went to their lodges, time they went everywhere else. And we teamed up with them, and it was really big, and it was a huge deal. It was 4 months. And then we picked up another major contract. One of the bigger contractors here in town for airlines called up and needed a new vendor. And that was a very big contract. It was an extra 125 trips a day.
A day.
And it was a massive thing. And it was a 4-month vetting period to go through this and looking at our vehicles and our records and all their stuff. And it was there. And then when we took it on, it was like, the untimeliness of 30 seconds was late. It was just this whole thing. And then having most of our airlines stay at one hotel. They were staying at 4 different hotels. So having all this, so we could have one captain that's over at the Hilton. We could have one that's at the Sheraton. We could have another captain at the Cook, and then one at the Marriott. And you had to have 4 separate vehicles picking all of them up, because you can't have them because everybody had the same pickup time. So it was a huge change for us. And so I was like, "Why don't you guys just stay at one hotel? What's the 4 hotels?" But they had different agreements for different people that were at different hotels that were there, and they didn't put all their eggs in one basket. They had them all delivered, and they do a great job. But it was a huge undertaking for us to take that on. It was June 1st, and we wanted to start it in April and May, where we can get in a little lighter time, get a little bit more practice. June 1st, we're full steam. And so we were, that's the year I worked, 2.5, 3 months straight. We were working max hours every day, just getting everything, just making sure the contract was good. So we also picked up another contract for another airline that was there doing their customs. So there's a lot of things that came open to us that were big influentials. I mean, huge $2-3 million contracts in 6 months. Yeah. So it was huge. So
how do you measure success? Like in your life, like I know, you're tremendously successful on paper for, all your businesses and personally and and professionally. You have, all these employees who you're serving and taking care of and helping them have great livings. Like what is it?
We had a person came out the other day and said they bought their first house. and they were so proud of it. And they bought their first car and they got their first loan payment, and it was their third year working for us, and they were getting married and they had money to go do things. Hearing the success stories of our employees, I think, are some of the huger ones. And I know it sounds like a feel good story, but when you have somebody says that they qualify for a house that they'd never be able to qualify for because the money they made from us and how they made more money every year and how they were able to qualify this, or they'd be able to go and buy their first car. We have a lot of young people that work for us that work at the airport. So like our ambassadors, we have a lot of younger generation there. So to be able to steer them in the right direction of where work ethic is, I mean, to push somebody in a wheelchair is not a position that's for everybody. It's not like flipping a burger or things like that. All those are all jobs everybody needs, but you have to have some some compassion to be able to, with working with people with special needs that need it, that maybe not be able to walk, or they have a speech impediment, or they have something there. This is a chance for them to learn how to work with people that that need help with services. And you can't teach, you can't you quantify that, I guess, into a way, because when at the end of the day, they feel good about what they did in their job and they help somebody.
Yeah. You can't pay people to feel that way.
No,
you can't pay them a bunch of money to feel that way. That's a purpose driven position and job. And you get purpose, it sounds like, or you feel successful when people feel that purpose. When
they feel that purpose, they're proud to work their uniform. Yeah. They like their job. They put in their posting, just got a job at BAC Transportation. Those are the things that you feel good about. Those are the things that you measure your success for. I mean, money and wealth and things like that all come with that stuff, and that's all nice stuff. Don't get me wrong. It's nice to have lake houses, nice to have other things out there too. But when you see your employees proud of where they work at and they talk about it and they bring their family members to come work for us, we have, if we have a nepotism rule, we'd be in trouble. I mean, we have some employees that have 5 different employees that their family members work for us, and some have big families, and some of them, it goes all the way from detailers to mechanics to drivers to people in our dispatch and our CSAs.
Just a testament to how great a place it is to work if they want their family members to work there, right?
Yeah, and it's again, my wife and our team and Amy Hawkinson. Amy is our HR director. She puts a lot of time and effort in that thing, and she really turned a lot of things around. Christina was our HR person before that. She was great too. She was with us from the very beginning where we started getting audits from DOT. I mean, all these different people were key people. Dan Hamilton was a mechanic for us for 8 years. He was one of the best mechanics we ever had. And now we have Sean, we have Mike, and we have Bill. So we have 3 different other mechanics who are just taking it to the next step. So you see all these different people taking it to the next level. Our EMS person, Pat Vincent, she's our EMS coordinator. She teaches all EMT 1, 2, 3, and paramedic courses. She's amazing. She was with the AFD for 18 years. She taught all their paramedics and kept them all in licenses. Mike Crotty came over from Anchorage Fire Department. He was a battalion chief. He was with them for 27 years. He just currently left us and went over to Matsu, and he's now the director of EMS for all Matsu. And so he's running all the ambulance companies and everything out there. So having these relationships with these guys, I can call any one of them at any time and ask them what we can do and how we can better things and work it. The same thing we do with the deputy chiefs and the chiefs here. I mean, I've talked to our Chief Schragi here before. I can call the mayor and talk to him. I can talk to all these people, and I'm not looking anything for them. I'm looking, how can we help and serve these people and do things for it? That was a success.
That's great.
Be able to have all these numbers at your fingertips. And I tell you, one of the biggest things my wife says that I do is hook other people with other people all the time. I mean, I get called for everything from tree stump removal all the way to where do I get my car fixed? I mean, and be able to have that person, because we deal with all these different things. So we have a person we can connect people with.
Yeah. Well, you've helped me in my business tremendously, so I can attest to that as well.
Us too.
Yeah. We're getting to the end here. This went a lot faster than I thought. We're about hour 5 into it.
Oh, really? I didn't know.
Yeah. So what's last question? I think we'll wrap it up here, but I really want to know what's next for Charlie Grimm and in your businesses.
You never know.
That's why I'm asking.
So, one thing that we started looking into is investing in properties. So now we're buying STRs, we're buying rental houses and remodeling and getting into the real estate. There is a difference between having money and wealth. And, I think the money is a great thing to have, but it doesn't really do a lot of good in their bank account. So we're trying to gain wealth now. We're trying to gain properties and investments. And what's that look like for retirement? Down the line, having those things generate income for you and pass there. So we just had another business opportunity dropped in our lap. We're going to talk with somebody next week about some of the things that's going to go on. There's another business opportunity. Somebody's looking for a partner into it. And so we're going to look at that. There's always opportunities.
Can't talk about it now, though.
No.
I'll ask you later off air.
Yeah. So there's always different opportunities to go there. But the one thing I can tell everybody that you can't buy is time. So the one thing you can't buy back is time with your kids. And I think some of our kids have gotten some of the short end of the stick of it because we were building our business so much more. So now we're trying to take more time off. We're going to, this September, we're going to take about 5 weeks off and go with our kids. And we're going to go through a motorhome trip. And we bought a motorhome. We're going to go through Lower 48.
Yeah, I was going to say, you guys have like this, work-life balance. I hate that whole term because I think the people who have figured it out have figured out how to integrate their work and life, and they make it all kind of work together. And I feel like you and Athena have done a really good job of that. You kind of have one speed. I think you're on or off. And I think, when you're on, you're always working. I feel like in a way you just are, you're always, ready to talk about your business. You're always ready to negotiate with people. You're a great negotiator. You're an unbelievable, personality that people love to talk to. But that's something that I really enjoy about you. But yeah, this work-life balance thing, it's like you guys bring your kids to work. They are part of your business as well. It's not like you guys just send them to some private school. Like they're at the school of Charlie Grimm and BAC Transportation. And
I think that's more the Athena Grimm school.
Athena Grimm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Athena Grimm school. But I see them at work when I go there.
So Audra, she works for us. She works for us part-time.
Yeah. Your daughter.
Yeah. Our son used to, but he's kind of a little entrepreneur. He's
got his own business.
Funko Pop businesses and his Pokemon cards, which it just drives me nuts sometimes. Like yesterday, we had to turn around and go, as we're going to the lake, I forgot we were supposed to go to Cars and Huffman to go sell a card. So we got all the way down to Tuner and had to turn around and go back. And I'm thinking he's selling like a $70 or $100 card. And he's like, you got change for a 20. I'm like, oh, no, I don't really. And he's like, well, the card's only $15. I'm like, we came here for $15. So we took a half an hour for time, but to him, it's the world. And so I have to understand that in his perspective. So I want him to be successful too. And
it's not about the money, like you said before. It's more about the experience of like, hey, I'm selling this. I got to meet this guy. And it's like,
he has appointments. He's
got a time. This is a part of being a business guy.
This is his business guy at 14 years old.
Yeah. I mean, he's amazing.
He has a Funko Pop store at Main Event.
I don't even know what you're saying right now.
Funko Pop.
Funko Pop.
It's like bobbleheads. It's like this. If you look up Funko Pops in your phone, these are huge. I mean, there's massive stores and they sell. And there's grown adults come to meet my son to buy these Funko Pops or these Pokemon cards or these things. And I'm looking at these people. I'm thinking, this guy's working at BP. Or he's working at Conoco and he's over here and he's got a Conoco bat and he's buying a Pokemon card for my son. I'm thinking, what is going on here? What do I not know about these things? Should I be investing in these things? I mean, I remember Athena gave away Orion's Pokemon cards. He must have had like a whole box of them because in the day he would just buy them and look at them and he grew up and he gave them away. And
Ryan's probably like, worth millions of dollars.
Ryan's like, you owe me so much money, Mom. You gave these things away. And they were just such a prize. And I had no idea what these things would be worth. So when you try to work that balanced life up, it's really tough. When you're growing your business, it's tough. It is, you're so consumed because you're trying to get that next level. And so you have to take it in stages and you have to realize the one thing, again, I can't say enough is you can't buy time back. You can't get their second grade back. You can't get their fifth grade back. You can't get their 13-year-old birthday party back. Everything else seems more important than what you're doing sometimes. And sometimes you have to really worry what is important, what's not. And so when you can figure that out, you've done really well. And the other side is if you love your job, you're not going to work, you're just doing what you do. And I really love BAC when AMT does. I like them both. Don't get me wrong. I get tired sometimes because it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It never shuts down. We never have a day that we're off. There's never one day.
Yeah. That's what I love about you is like, you don't get a different Charlie Grimm. Like you don't change from personal stuff to work stuff. You're who you are. You're super authentic. And I love you for that. How much of your success do you think, this is the very last question, I promise.
Sure.
How much of your success would you attribute to luck? And how much would you attribute to just hard work, grit, determination, and keeping your eye on the prize, maybe percentage wise, or, because COVID for you was kind of a lucky deal, not for a lot of people. I hate to say that, but, that kind of, put you in, like took a new business that you were starting that was right where you needed to be when you needed to be there for COVID and be able to start that medical transportation business. It was an unbelievable timing in my book. That you could have never predicted. So what do you think if you could break it down? I mean,
luck is my wife. You asked her this question, you're going to get hammered. So
I am going to ask her this.
Yeah. She's going to say there's no luck in this. There's opportunities. and you have to look at the opportunities that are put in front of you. And she is right on this. We were into this thing knowing that we're going to be in here. It was going to be a slow go. It did move a little faster because of COVID, but we took the opportunities and took the chances where some people weren't. And that's not to say I'm arrogant or anything like that. There's always an opportunity for somewhere. There's always an opportunity to help the next person down the street when you don't really need to. We saw an opportunity that was in there, and there wasn't a lot of people jumping on it. And we really, we were panicking at first. I'm not going to tell you. We sat down with Jeff Reed was our operations manager at the time, and when COVID happened, we were looking at what payroll was, and we were averaging 225,000, 250,000 every 2 weeks in payroll. How did this look? How much money do we have in reserves? How are we going to treat our employees? We had the person that just bought houses. We had the person that just bought cars. What's their livelihood look like? And we're like, okay, we're going to have to cut back. We're going to have to cut wages. We're going to have to do this. Overtime's going to go away, all this other stuff. And we had to freeze because even our vendors were doing the same thing, like the wheelchair contract. I mean, there was nobody flying, so there was no wheelchairs to push. Well, we were paid monthly. Cut. So they're like, hey, we're going to give you guys 2 or 3 weeks notice. We can't use you guys anymore like that. I'm like, well, hey, how can we rework this? I don't want to end our contract because we know this is going to end someday. So what are we going to do? So we gave them back the contracts, the wheelchairs for $1. We lend them our $40,000 of the wheelchairs for $1 a day. I mean, $1 a month. And said, here, if you're going to continue, we want to have these back at the end of it. And when this comes back up, we want this contract still because this is something valuable. So we worked with them. So when I say this all, there was ways that we could have went to the blue door or the red door. I always think that the Matrix, the red pill and the blue pill. Yeah. And we really went to the red pill immediately, like code red. And then when we looked at it, said, wait, stop. Let's rethink this. We're not going to make any haste decisions. Let's sit on this and think about it. And then we looked at the opportunities that were in there. And when we looked at it, and Athena and I both having a fire and EMS background, and we looked at what the fire department was doing and how they were reacting to things. And of course, I had people in my academy and different people that I knew, the chiefs. I was calling them, what are you guys doing to prepare yourself for this? Oh, we're buying these pappers. Where are you buying these pappers? Alaska Safety. Well, I work with Alaska Safety. How much are these pappers? They're $1,800 a piece, Charlie. Okay, I'll take 10 of them. We need to be able to protect our people. So if we're going to do crew, we're going to take these people. I'm in a papper. I'm driving an ambulance, driving a papper. So
what's a papper?
A papper is a self-contained breathing apparatus, but it's basically a filter system that goes inside there. So it takes out the elements that we were looking for that we thought were there at the time. And it's a positive pressure. So you're always having positive pressure. There's nothing that's going to suck in. It always sucks out. So you always have this positive pressure going to your face. And when you're blowing out, you're blowing in. So there's nothing you're sucking in, any kind of droplets or anything else like that. So we were looking at all this stuff and seeing how can we change this, which turned into 20 pappers we ended up with, so we have all these pappers now, and now we have no pandemic. So we're not using them very often, but it's so funny. We still have them on our ambulance because if we do have a really bad patient, we know that we can down these, we can put them on and know we're going to be a little bit more safer in those. So when you say luck, some people call it luck and some people do. You were super lucky that this all happened when it is. I think everything's purpose driven. I think that, we have a higher being up above, God, and God knows what's going to happen and what's going on where we're here. And he puts the right people at the right job sometimes. And I think that we were at the right position at the right time and we were able to execute on it. And I think that is the more of the message I want to tell people is that sometimes luck is not what you're is. You can be lucky to get hit by a train. But you can be lucky by that you can be lucky that you didn't fall down off a cliff. But
or lucky you didn't choke on that steak.
Amen. But you're luckily that the guy next to you was a paramedic and he did the Heimlich maneuver on you. I mean, there's all these things, or there was a purpose driven behind what you were supposed to do.
I like that.
So I look at that part, and sometimes I argue with my wife about luck and stuff. I'm like, God, that we were so lucky. She's like, we're not lucky. We're opportunists. We look for opportunities in it. And she's right. I mean, we just purchased a house from a person that had passed away. And this whole thing came up and we were buying a trailer. And then we asked them about the house for sale. What are you going to do with the house? And then we found out the house is for sale. And we're like, we'd like to be first ones to bid on it. And then all of a sudden this whole thing came in our lap and we ended up buying the house 3 weeks later.
Is that luck or is that luck or is it an opportunity?
Yeah. We looked at it and said, hey, you're selling the trade or you're selling the boat. What else is going?
You're putting the vibe out there, in other words, in the universe, and it's coming back to you.
So my wife and another one, she always says, you can't make withdrawals until you make deposits. So if you want to say another thing that's really good is you can't go to people and ask for a bunch of things before you put deposits in. Yeah. And when you put deposits in, you're more than welcome to try to get some of that money out of it, or you can get some of those favors out of it.
That's great advice. I like that.
Yeah. You got to put deposits before you make withdrawals. And so we put a lot of deposits in the community. We put a lot of things and we get a lot of withdrawals from the community. We get a lot of things from it. So if you're relationship driven and you're doing these things, and those are things that are hard to teach people, but treat people with respect, nice. Treat them with if you're going to say you're going to do something, do it. Do it to the best of your ability. If you can't do it, explain why you can't and apologize and make it right.
Charlie, you're unbelievable.
Yeah, well, this is something I can talk about. This is something I feel comfortable about. And if you were asking me all the IT stuff, I'd be like, okay, well, let's get on your phone and call for a lifeline. Let's call Athena. Let's ask her about this.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We're going to have Athena on later.
Good for you.
We're going to have her on.
That'll
later.
be a whole different conversation.
Yeah. No, it's going to be good because she'll be able to, give us another angle from your guys' point of view. But as always, Charlie, it's so good to talk to you, man. You're such a great human being.
Proud of what you guys are doing in your business.
Well, yeah, thanks
for having me on.
Yeah, you bet, man. We'll talk soon.
Okay, thanks.